Friends, I am so excited because today we are painting something for fall, sunflowers. And what has inspired this for me is a recent trip to the Van Gogh Immersive Experience. So if you've never been to it, it's amazing. If it comes to your city, I highly recommend it. But what I was surprised by, because I had seen a lot of reels and photos about what it was like, but when I actually got into that space and read about his life and saw his works and saw it all come together, I felt extremely down, like depressed during the whole exhibition. I've never heard someone say that before, but for me, it hit me hard. And it's because this is a man that was so troubled. I really didn't know his story until I went there. At 37, he took his own life. He actually tried to hurt himself, but ended up hurting himself in the stomach, and that's what caused him to pass away. He was troubled with schizophrenia, he had seizures, he was isolative, he spent many different times going back and forth from mental institutions, asylums, and we know back then the mental health care that they received was not what it is today. And he was troubled, he was disturbed, and all of that came out in his art. But at 37, to pass away from this world, having created something like almost 1,000 pieces of art and almost 1,000 pieces of sketches. I forget what the numbers were exactly. He created so many things and he seemed to put his heart and soul into it. But there were some things that were missing and in his life, and he was obviously very, very, very lonely and very disturbed. So today I wanted to contribute just a little bit as we're reminding ourselves of who he was. He wasn't famous until after he passed away. But sunflowers were iconic for him. He loved them. So today, as we're painting sunflowers, I did want to talk to you guys about one thing that I think that we are lacking that would help us improve, especially as watercolor beginners. I do believe that this is something that Van Gogh struggled with a lot. It has nothing to do with whether it's mental health related or not, but this specifically, if you kind of change this narrative in your head, I think it will help you when it comes to your watercolor, your journey, and maybe feeling a little bit better about your painting. So a little contribution to just the legacy of Van Gogh, what he left for us, the paintings and the inspiration. Let's paint some watercolor sunflowers today. So I'm starting with my yellow ochre, just grabbing it with my quill brush. You could use a number 10 round if you don't have a quill. And I'm going to start stippling the center of my sunflower. So that means just adding tiny little dots as quick as you can so that they're going to be very natural, leaving some white space. Adding in a bit of brown too. So just going over that around the outside, a little bit of extra texture. You know, I'm working fast with this. You can always slow down the video if it is a little bit much. We're going to do this several times, and so you're going to start to get very used to the technique. And right now I'm just trying to figure out how wide to go. Sunflowers do have a very wide center. Some of them do, some of them don't. So you can use your intuition with this, kind of, you know, make it wonky, don't make it a circle that's perfect, but just adding in some little bits here and there on the outside just to start completing your center. I just like to do more layers and get bigger as I go. And that way I'm not going to have this perfect circle, and I can always expand it and make it bigger. I can never make it smaller, right? So I have to be careful. A little more yellow ochre, choose another place for your next center and go for it. So those tiny little dabbing motions allow little bits of white space to remain on the paper. And I am using a very cheap watercolor journal today. It is 9x5, sorry I didn't say that. Grabbing some brown. Doing the same thing, letting these two wet paints just kind of mix together and create the texture. So you can use whatever paper you want. You can use a fancy hot press is not it, cold press paper if you'd like. You can use a cotton paper or just a pulp paper. Everything will work here. And I know today you're trying to figure out, okay, what is this thing? What is this one thing that's hurting your watercolor as a beginner? So as I'm doing this kind of half circle situation, because this flower is going to be tilted a bit, I just want you guys to think about, for me, at least today, the number one thing that's hurting you as a beginner is that you don't believe in yourself. So let that sink in. I don't know if that's true for you, but do you ever self-doubt? Do you think that you are not as good as you think that you should be? There's so much of this that happens in our brain, this narrative of what we think should be or shouldn't be. So in order to let go of that, you got to tell yourself, you know what, I'm as good as I am today, and tomorrow will be a little bit better. Grabbing with the same brush, some yellow, it's okay if there's orange. We're just going to go from the outside in, drawing in some petals. People were doing this over and over again, and I'm okay with these guys being kind of wonky. I'm not worried about if they are straight, if they're even. Actually, the wonkier the better. And you can see that my petals, I'm kind of doing several swoops per petal, and it's giving me some cool texture on the ends there. If it's a little square like mine where you can just go ahead and just fix that a little bit. But right now, using darker yellow, maybe a lighter yellow with more water mixed in, just swoop in from the outside in and getting that beautiful round shape here. Now, if some of the petals are longer and shorter, you're adding to the wonkiness of this flower, and it's not going to be perfect. You can see that there is brown that is spreading into the yellow. I actually kind of like that. It's a fun little look. So allow it to be what it is. We're letting go of perfect, right? But part of believing in yourself is that you can also make mistakes. Isn't that funny? So we're going to keep doing this, people, all right? From the outside in, just creating some texture here, creating some swoopy petals. And you can go in with very watery yellow, or you can mix some brown into your yellow. I'm doing some shorter petals here just because of the tilt of the flower, and you can see the perspective changes there. Believing in yourself means you tell yourself kind things. Your narrative is good. It's not bad. You can criticize yourself only for the reason of helping yourself, of learning. Let's do this on the top. You're going to see that some of these petals are tucked behind the others, and that's okay. I'm loving how the brown and the yellow are melding together. And I do apologize right now for how quick this is. I did this without talking, and I tend to paint faster if I'm not talking. So voiceover later, I'm trying to catch up myself. But like I said, you can always pause the video or slow it down, and it'll be a better pace for you. All right, so I've got all the petals in there. Putting down that quill brush, put down your round brush, whatever you need to do. And I'm now going to use my pencil to sketch out my vase. So kind of think about this roundy, this curved shape here for the top of the jar. It's not a flat line, it's curved. And now we're doing the bottom of the jar right there. So curved around, showing that curvature, that movement. And then you've got to do the sides of the jar. I like to sketch out the jar. It helps me to believe in myself that I can actually do a jar that looks like it's supposed to. The curved line in the front where it comes around, just a cute little jar, nothing fancy about it. If I have my sketch in there, it helps me to stay on track. If I end up doing it without a sketch, my vase is just like very basic. And now we're going to outline with a light blue color your vase, your jar, just to give some reflections of what that glass would look like. This is the easy part, right? You already have your sketch. Just going around. It's okay if there's some thicker and thinner lines. I like to have those lines here. The little grooves at the top of the jar makes it look a little more realistic as well. So what are some ways that you can start believing in yourself? I feel like a big thing is focusing on what you can do. We're doing, of course, the line in the inside to show the bottom, the flat part, the bottom of the jar. And we can also do our water line and get that in there too. You know, if you remind yourself that you've come so far, if you haven't painted before, then you just remind yourself you're just starting today, and that's okay. Be graceful to yourself, be kind. But the narrative that you speak with speaks volumes. I've got some blue lines just kind of going back and forth. I'm going really fast because I'm trying not to overthink this whole process. A little bit of blue for reflections. You can darken up some places if you'd like to. Really up to you, what you think needs to happen in this case. I'm liking how this jar is coming together. I do like it a lot better than some of my other jars and vases because I put in the sketch. I'm going to grab some green now, and we're going to start by putting in a bud for our sunflower. And when I say focusing on what you can do, just think about all the things that you have created. Maybe take out your old sketchbooks, take out your old paintings, and look at the style and the things that you love. That's going to encourage you to keep going and to remind yourself that you can do these things. Let's do some leaves here. You know, I like to drag out the brush. Really thick, really wide leaves for our sunflowers. And then we're gonna fill in some of it, but not all of the leaf, because that will be some natural highlights that we can leave on the leaf. I've made it very light here too, so we can add in some more texture if we like. Grabbing another green, you know, what's on your palette, if things are mixing together, just go with it. I don't like color mixing, honestly. I don't like intentionally adding this green and this brown and that whatever to create different shades. So I like to have a variety of greens already, and then allowing them to mix and match on the palette. Just, it takes away the difficulty of having to figure out what I want to do. They just mix naturally, and I can just go with that. I jive with that. All right, I added in 3 leaves now, and you can put in your stems. Now through the jar, we're just going to go with this very light green, and so go ahead and add those in. Now we're going to do a lot of, we have some leaves, you know, a good amount of leaves, and so within that we can even have stems for those too. So right now I've got 3 blooms and I've got the bud, but of course we could add a few more as we see fit, and there are no rules on this, you know, except just to have fun. So adding in more dark green here, I'm just going to really loosely, you can see, go around and just add in the greens where I want them to be. They don't have to be perfect shapes. You could just do squiggly lines, and that I will fill that in. I'm really big on that, kind of drawing out the brush and seeing what happens. Few quick little lines here for some funky grassy bits, and it starts to come together quite nicely. And it was fairly effortless too. So now I'm grabbing some navy. We want to do a nice little shadow. You know me, just going quick right here, back and forth strokes. I'm not making a realistic shadow. Just don't want the vase to be floating on the page. And so now adding a little more concentrated navy around that jar line there in some spaces, just to give it a pop of color. And I have to say, you know, as we're thinking about not believing in ourselves, grabbing some yellow, let's do a little bit of splatter. You know, I love splatter. Not believing in ourselves, it's about self-doubt, right? And we do this a lot. I'm taking a number 6 round brush here, by the way, and I'm going to grab some other browns and just darken up some of those centers as we're chatting. So if you doubt yourself, you're normal, you're a human being. I actually doubt myself a lot. Even with this painting, I wasn't sure how it was going to come out. I was quite pleased with the end result, but I'm not always happy or pleased with the end result of my painting. So I want to be honest about that. I've been painting for over 5 years now, and I still have those moments of like, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? And that's normal. Just, you have to counter that narrative and remind yourself what you can do. And then maybe if you're having some stuck moments, you can say, you know what am I really good at? And just practice that for a day or a week and see how that goes. I've got that reddish brown that I pulled from the palette, and you can see I'm just darkening up some of the edges of the middles, and I added it in the center as well, for especially that smaller one. Now I am darkening up the stems here, a dark green color, making them wonky, and I'm actually going to add in little lines right there at the top. You can't usually see them too good because of the ridges of the jar, and so I'm just sort of adding those in quite loosely. Things get kind of distorted and look a little bit wonky when that happens, when you have the jar, when you've got the water. So however you'd like to create that effect, it's always fun. And don't forget to breathe while you're doing this as well. I know you guys are learning and growing, and I really hope that this video can help encourage you guys to focus on believing in you and believing that you're going to get to the place that you want to be at. It just takes time, like everything. So let's do some veins. I've got a darker green for the veins. I do that center line, and then I do those veins splitting off from the center. Very loose, holding the brush loosely, going quickly, letting the brush just kind of move around. Sometimes I put veins on everything and sometimes I just do them on a few things. But I do like to add some contrast. So some quick little blotches of color, little blobs, little lines, just help to emphasize. And if you want to add a little bit more green here and there, go for it. This is that part, that final part where you do those final details and kind of look at what's missing. If you like, you can actually take, especially when your jar is, or your stems are dry, you can add in a little bit of blue where that water is, and that can make it look a little more realistic. Right now, I'm just adding in some darker yellow here and there, just again for more contrast on the petals. It's very loose, you can hardly see it, but it does make a bit of a difference for the coloring and for the texture too. So I use a smaller brush, the number 6. I try not to worry about getting it right. You know, sometimes I darken up a side of the petal, sometimes it's the center, sometimes it's little squiggles, sometimes it's big marks. I'd say the big tip on that is just being asymmetrical and not looking for perfect and not trying to make it all match. And I think that your end result will be a lot more attractive. So a little bit more of that darker blue, just going around, a little bit of highlights for my jar just to make it stick out a little bit more. And of course, in the glass itself, you can add in some little marks like I did. This is going to give more boldness, more artsy look to it. And if you don't like all of it, you can take a clean, damp brush and just start to really blend some of that color out so that the lines are not so dark. You're going to get more of those softer lines. I did decide in the end I wanted to add a few lines to that leaf in the front. So this is all learning process. Now I'm seeing that the darkness, I'm not liking that so much with the stems. So I'm just taking a clean damp brush. So I'm dabbing on the paper towel and removing, picking up some of that paint, because I'm realizing that with the stems being in the jar, they're going to be a little diffused and not so intense. And that's it, my friends. All right, thank you so much, friends, for having painted with me today. I love that you're here, that you're doing all the things. I wanted to draw your attention to my waitlist for Italy. We will be going back next year. I'm actually going back in a few weeks, end of this month, or end of October, I should say. And I'm excited to take you with me next year if you like. Waitlist is linked below if you want to sign up just to get updates and see if you'd like to come with us. All my watercolor brushes are gone. Thank you so much for purchasing them if you did purchase and for supporting me. I had a lot of fun with this project. It was really great fun. And friends, if you don't know what to watch next, here's a suggestion for you. Happy painting, happy mental health. I wish you well. Mwah.